Birger Jarl, or Earl Birger, was a Swedish nobleman, most famous for founding Stockholm city in the year 1252. Not one to back away from a nice title, Birger took it upon himself to be the guardian of the Swedish kingdom and crowned his own firstborn as the first king of Sweden, King Valdemar, not to be confused with Voldemort. However, Voldemar did indeed carry a bad omen as he wasn't a king for too long. Turns out his younger brother, Magnus, as it is fitting of a spiteful younger sibling, threw a petty tantrum claiming it was unfair older brother got to be a king just because he was the firstborn. And thus, what better way to resolve this injustice than to play a game of thrones and fight his brother for the crown. Unfortunately, karma is unforgiving, and Magnus's own successors, his two sons, learnt from their father's tactics and also end up going to war with each other, splitting the nobility's alliances in half and leading to their own untimely deaths. What a wonderful functional family this was. In the annals of history, a figure stands resolute, Gustav Eriksson, or as we know him, Gustav Vasa. Generally agreed to be born on May the 12th, 1496, Gustav's life was a weaving of threads of nobility and destiny, and in his death on September 29, 1560, it was marked by legacy and chronic infections. The House of Vasa, established in 1523, was not merely a name, but a lineage deeply rooted in the tapestry of Swedish nobility. Gustav's parentage, a harmonious blend of Vasa and Sture, traced its origins to the esteemed Gregers Birgersson, a knight and the illegitimate son of the founder of Stockholm, Birger Jarl. And another possible royal thread that traces even further back to Sverker II, King of Sweden. Gustav's escape from Christian II's troops in 1520 gave birth to Vasaloppet, a 90-kilometer skiing marathon, tracing the route he took to gather allies for the rebellion. As a result, along with some decent strategizing skills, Gustav composed the Battle of Västerås in 1521, defeating the Danish king, a crescendo that echoed through history as the Swedish War of Liberation. Gustav Vasa was a prolific patriarch and multitasker, it seems, fathering 11 children. A strategic move, perhaps, to replenish the checkers-playing nobles with chess pieces of his own. Tactically repopulating the Swedish nobility with a royal touch following Stockholm's bloodbath.
Fatality.
Gustav I's broader impact was a harmonious reign that extended beyond politics. He conducted the establishment of the Church of Sweden, making Sweden a Protestant powerhouse. The Kungliga Hofkapellet, founded by Gustav, still plays on as one of the oldest orchestras in the world. He was the virtuoso of Sweden's Renaissance, who left a legacy that resonates through the halls of time. His chords of centralization, Protestantism, and hereditary succession still echo in the symphony of Swedish history. This, dear viewers, is the saga of Gustav Vasa, the man who didn't just wear the crown, he composed the very melody of modern Sweden, leaving an indelible mark on the pages of history. Stockholm's royal palace. Quite disappointing for a palace. Looks more like a parliament. Well, the Swedes were not known for their taste in architecture, so... Norrström, or the Northern Stream, glistening and glittering below the parliament and the royal palace. I wish my future could glitter as bright as this. And here we have one of Sweden's few amphibians. Well, you can never trust the weather, but you can always trust that there will be construction. Step into the pages of history as we unfold the tale of Gustavus Adolphus, or as they call him, Gustav the Great. Born on December 9, 1594, the Swedish sovereign left a lasting mark on the world, making him not just a king, but a legend. Gustavus II, the precocious monarch, started his epic journey at the tender age of 16, challenging not one, not two, but 3 wars against formidable foes. No wonder he earned the title the Great. Talk about teenage rebellion. Father of modern warfare, Gustavus wasn't just a ruler, he was a military marvel. He revamped the Swedish army, introducing new battle formations, logistics, and maximizing musketry. It's like he took a page out of a military IKEA manual and built the perfect war machine. Gustavus elevated Sweden to one of the great powers of the continent during the 30 Years' War, in which his intervention in Germany completely turned the tables in favor of the Protestants. Hence his other title, the Lion of the North. Did you know Gustavus Adolphus has his own metal anthem? That's right, the Swedish metal band Sabaton immortalized him in the song titled The Lion of the North. The kind of recognition you'd trade a crown for. Almost. Gustavus wasn't just about conquering territories, he was also an education enthusiast. He established academic facilities, including what we now know as the University of Tartu in Estonia. A king with brains and brawn, a rare combo. Gustav Adolf II of Sweden, also known as the Lion of the North, with balls of steel. Rawr. Now let's talk about the affairs of the heart. Gustavus married once, but his dalliances led to both legitimate and not so legitimate offspring. Yet it was his legitimate child, Queen Christina, who brought a whole telenovela vibe to the royal court. Alas, even legends meet their end. Gustavus the Great, wounded in the Battle of Lutzen, faced his final curtain call with a bullet to the temple. A dramatic exit, wouldn't you say? Rumor has it he was found partly stripped. A king who went without a bang. Gustavus Adolphus, the Lion of the North, the father of modern warfare, a royal rock star with a penchant for conquering, educating, leaving a lasting rift in the heart of metal fans worldwide and the records of time. It's fine. There may be one monarchy, but there are two empires in Sweden. The Swedish royal family and IKEA. Nothing says Sweden like a butt-naked guy in the public.
Hello there.
Hello. Do you know who the street is named after?
No, I have only 1 year here, so I don't know actually all the names. So I know only where I work. Carla Plank, Gamla Stan, Bentley is here, so that's it.
What do you think of the royals here in Sweden?
Super. I like it so much. I want to know who is the king here to see. Maybe he liked me.
I think he would love you. Absolutely.
Yeah? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
I want to meet him.
Yeah. Oh God, you're amazing. Queen Christina was the only child of King Gustav Vasa II, the great warrior king. From the moment she was born and mistakenly taken for a boy, Christina garnered quite the unladylike reputation for her era. Some of her most unusual choices for a lady of her stature in the 1600s, including her preference for masculine clothing and an alleged relationship with a woman, Ebba Spada, her lady-in-waiting. Quite the scandal. In the preceding centuries, Queen Christina has become a lesbian icon, especially after her portrayal by Greta Garbo in the 1933's film Queen Christina. Queen Christina also had an infamous meeting with French philosopher René Descartes. Upon reading his work, she invited him to Sweden to start a scientific academy. He arrived in Sweden in October of 1649. In December, Descartes began lessons with the Queen in the cold, damp castle. In February, he caught a cold and died 10 days later of pneumonia. So while it would be unfair to call Queen Christina a murderer, she certainly could have offered Descartes a scarf. Christina refused to marry any of her many suitors, which led to such a decrease in popularity that she eventually abdicated the Swedish throne under immense pressure from the rest of the Swedish nobility. So where does a disliked, controversial royal like Christina seek refuge after such a scandal? Well, none other than the Vatican. Now, this may seem like an odd choice for a rebel queen. But I can assure you, Catholicism seemed quite attractive to Christina for many a reason. For starters, as someone who wanted nothing to do with the know-it-all men of her time, the concept of abstinence was mighty attractive to our Queen Christina. Additionally, she had quite the extravagant taste when it came to expensive artworks and literature, so it would be fair to assume that only the Catholic Church's money could cover such expenses. Not only did she convert to Catholicism and reject the entire Lutheran legacy of her father, but she was warmly welcomed by the Pope, who yielded to her every whim, only so that he could brag to his Lutheran counterparts about how even the daughter of the Swedish warrior king recognizes this Catholic Church as sovereign over all the land. Quite the handsome trade-off for our queen. Queen Christina never indeed married, nor did she have any children, something she absolutely refused, and yet she lived a full life to the ripe age of 63. An accomplishment for the time in the Vatican, where she is buried. Known for her great mind and wit, she mingled with the most revered philosophers, artists, and thinkers of her time. A true Renaissance woman, if there ever was one. We will unravel the tale of the enigmatic Karl XII, a king whose life was seasoned with both strategic brilliance and a touch of international culinary flair. Living between 1682 and 1718, Karl XII's reign was a rollercoaster of military might and culinary diplomacy. Consumed by the Great Northern War, he faced the odds, almost always outnumbered 3-1, a bit like Swedish David against a Goliath made of beard and borscht. But let's talk meatballs. Legend has it that Karl XII brought these savory spheres to Sweden from the Ottoman Empire during his exile. Who knew a king could not only conquer lands but also tantalize taste buds? A strategic withdrawal from blandness, one might say. And speaking of legends, Karl got none other than Voltaire to write his biography. Move over, Game of Thrones. We've got a real-life tale of kings, wars, and witty quills. Karl XII's sister, Queen Ulrika Eleonora, who after his death ascended the throne, facing sexist opposition that would make even the most resilient royals raise an eyebrow. In a twist of fate, Ulrika's abdication paved the way for her husband Friedrich I to rule. He, however, was not a power-hungry monarch. Instead, Friedrich I handed over significant powers to the Swedish parliament, kickstarting the Swedish Age of Freedom. A royal who believed in sharing the crown. Now that's a plot twist. Queen Ulrika claimed relinquishing the Swedish throne was the greatest sacrifice of her life. Little did she know there were more plot twists in store. Rumors swirled that her husband may have played a part in Karl's demise. Was it a royal conspiracy or just a spicy serving of court gossip? The death of Karl XII remains shrouded in mystery, a battlefield drama with whispers of assassinations and wealthy classes plotting against a taxing ruler. Karl's life may have ended on the battlefield, but the tales of his reign, his meatball importation, and the subsequent royal intrigues continue to spice up Swedish history.
Where is he pointing to?
St. Petersburg. Well, he didn't actually defeat Peter the Great. And technically, he actually just... Peter the Great didn't want to fight and he sued for peace, so Karl XII took that as a victory. So apparently that's how you win things. Anyways, he took a petty little turn of events and decided he should be pointing to St. Petersburg, which was occupied by Sweden, so at some point. So there's that. And here we have found a real Viking in the wild. Look at all these fools waiting for something to happen. Is it part of your daily duties to help the royal family assemble their IKEA furniture? Let's read some minds of the Swedish royal guards. They seem to have inside information. Do you think they know that the Swedish princesses can summon birds like Snow White? As you can tell, they are not impressed with our presence. They are quite bothered by our questions and our presence. They're slowly gaining on the seriousness of the British Royal Guard. Although, to be fair, it is very Swedish to not smile. Well, we tried our luck with the royal guards. They were absolutely uninterested in answering our questions for the royal family. It is their job to guard, not to talk. In 1772, King Gustav III ushered in the Gustavian era when he staged a bloodless coup d'etat on himself and reimagined the division of power between king and parliament, resulting in the end of the Age of Liberty. As royal autocrats aren't supposed to do in the constitutional monarchy, he pushed to strengthen the power of the monarchy. The Unity and Security Act of 1789 was adopted by the Swedish parliament, the Riksdag, though this was achieved through strong arming and coercion, not actual approval. He banned coffee and conducted clinical trials to prove its dangers. Everyone but the coffee drinker died before the study was concluded. Gustav III had a thespian flair himself, every bit of a dramatic king he was, and thus he spent quite frivolously on cultural ventures, including, for example, the construction of the original Stockholm Opera House. Such was his affection for the opera that it turned into his biggest Achilles heel, as it was one of the opera's famous masquerade balls that King Gustav III was targeted by assassins and ended up succumbing to his injuries a week later. Not easy being a king of Sweden with increasing public discontent and a wide range of political enemies. His hunger for power sealed his fate from the start. I don't know. So here we have Gustav III's obelisk he gifted to the citizens of Sweden to thank them for their citizenry during the Russia-Swedish War. Do you think he's compensating for something? Karl XIII was King of Sweden from 1809 and King of Norway from 1814. As the Swedish parliament gained more power post-Gustav III, King Karl XIII did not have much room to negotiate. He was perceived as an old, useless and weak king. Throughout the 19th century, much of the Swedish monarchy's focus was on trying to retain power in a society that was becoming increasingly liberal and socially democratic. Ultimately, the royals had to adapt to survive, doing their best to ensure that the Riksdag, Parliament, was amenable to their station. At this point in time, the king still had executive authority that could be exercised only when in the presence of his cabinet ministers. If he was away, the ministers could make decisions on his behalf. In 1810, King Karl XIII dies, and the elected heir, Charles August, also dies suddenly in a military training exercise. Left with no monarch and an impending encounter with Napoleon's army, the Swedish parliament is at a stalemate. In order to avoid an armed conflict with Napoleon, they let him pick Sweden's next king. The 4 lions surrounding the statue were added in 1824. Each lion holds a globe in its paw. The globes bear the coat of arms of Sweden and Norway, as King Karl XIII ruled both nations from 1814 onwards. Oh, look, mocajones. As I imagine it, Napoleon goes back to his army and looks at the crew of his most loyal military generals. As he measures whether they would be up to the task, Napoleon's eyes land on Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte. Could a name be any more French than that? And he announces, "Jean-Baptiste, my bastard, you are getting promoted today. You shall become the next king of Sweden." Poor before Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte gets his cute French buttocks to freaking frigid Sweden and there becomes crowned King Carl XIV Johan, an extra Swedish-sounding name for a very French fake king. Thus begins the Bernadotte dynasty, which continues to this day. Of course, forever French in his heart and gut, Jean-Baptiste is the first king to popularize mushroom eating in Sweden. Here we have the future of the nation in the wild, with their neon orange vests and zest for life. Carl Gustaf XVI, born 30th of April 1946, is the current King of Sweden, but you may know him best as the host presenter of the Nobel Prizes. His Majesty wasn't just destined for royal duties. He had a stint serving in the Navy, Air Force, and Army, of which he earned lieutenant for the former and captain for the latter two. Now that's what we call earning your stripes, or should we say, crowns. It was in the beginning of his almost 51-year reign that the last of his executive power was removed. However, he still has the capacity to shuffle or influence royal matters, for instance, removing or granting titles. Two such ironic times were with his sister and wife. You see, when Carl's sister Christina married a commoner, she was removed from the royal house. However, this principle was not applied to his wife, Queen Sylvia, who was also a commoner. Talk about sibling rivalry and pettiness. Whilst that potentially awkward scenario may not have been anything serious between the siblings, let's not forget that behind the royal facade there's a king with a flair. A flair for fashion, that is.